Tuesday, July 25th, 2019 meeting of the Milwaukee County Board of Supervisors will come to order.
Item 26, file number 19582, creating the Milwaukee City-County Joint Task Force on Climate and Economic Equity to convene area leaders for the purpose of making practical recommendations consistent with the 2018 IPCC and NCA4 reports so our community may achieve net greenhouse gas emission reductions of 45% of 2010 levels by 2030 and achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050 or sooner and mitigate racial and income inequality through green jobs. This item was recommended for adoption at your committee.
Okay. Does anyone wish to speak on item 26? Supervisor Cullen.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank the authors for this resolution. I think it's really cool that we're getting involved with this at the county, local level, and I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor.
Supervisor Cullen requests to be added as co-sponsor. Hearing no objection, so ordered. Supervisor Johnson Jr.
Mr. Chairman, I ask to be added as a co-sponsor without, I ask unanimous consent to be added as a co-sponsor.
All right. Supervisor Johnson Jr. asks to be added as co-sponsor. Hearing no objection, so ordered. Supervisor Dimitrievic.
Please add me as a co-sponsor.
Also asked to be added. Hearing no objection, so ordered. All right. Does anyone wish to speak on the item? Supervisor Shea, who is already a co-sponsor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I said in committee, if there's any criticism that I have of this resolution is that the goals are too modest. Today, just now, in Paris, France, it hit 108.7 degrees, breaking the all-time record by 4 degrees. Wow. We are seeing weather, once in a 1,000-year weather events, not just every year, but almost every week. It hit the 120s in India this year. Anchorage, Alaska had a 90-degree temperature. Above the Arctic Circle, it hit the mid-80s. You don't have to be a climatologist to figure something is going on here. And I believe our movement towards renewable energies and eliminating fossil fuels is as important a question as faces our nation and our planet. So I will be supporting this resolution today. And I've gotten multiple questions. Why did I get this haircut? Well, first of all, I am old enough to remember the 1960s, and I wanted to salute our 1960s astronauts. And if you're old enough to remember, this is the kind of haircut they wore. But more importantly, it was a practical measure, and some of the hot days we've already had in the short time since I had this haircut, this was very, very practical indeed. So I will support this resolution. I ask every supervisor to support it. It's a win-win-win. We're moving to save our planet. We're creating new jobs, and we're creating jobs in parts of our city that desperately need them. So, thank you, and see you at the barbershop.
All right. Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Johnson Jr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This resolution is very, very important. I'm glad that we have the intergovernmental cooperation between the county and the city as relate to these measures. A few weeks ago, I just happened to look on the internet to find out where the 100 most polluted places were as it relates to air quality, and most of them are in India and in China, countries that have populations of over 1 billion people. So with respect to the Paris Accords and the fact that this present federal administration has decided to withdraw from it does not help our situation here in the United States. as it relates to gaining more ground across the world as it relates to pollution and greenhouse gas emissions. But nevertheless, we have to keep working, and I appreciate the fact that this resolution has been offered. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Alexander.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the resolution before us is very close to a waste of time and will make very little impact on the world. I think it's a feel-good measure, certainly well-intentioned, and I think we can all support caring for the environment, but I think that this is not going to get us even a step in the right direction of where we really need to go. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Dimitrovic.
Just not going to let that be the last comment, but I appreciate it, and everyone definitely is entitled to their opinion. That's the beauty of this country and this body. But I wanted to thank the citizens who came out and organized. You know, it was the same thing, like I said, with the pesticide-free parks. I want to let you know that it does matter, and I have to say, now that I have 2 children in this world, I really do, you know, I stay up late at night thinking about things, but usually because my baby needs me, and then that makes me think a little bit more. And I truly worry about the way we're going to leave things for future generations, and in a way that I never worried before. In fact, it's actually scientifically proven that mothers change when they have babies, and their mental thought process and chemical changes. It's actually science that shows that. And while I'm on the point of science, it's actually scientifically showing that climate change is real and that we have problems here. And if we don't make fixes, technically we actually should have had this task force like 10 years ago. Because if we don't make major changes, and I think that's, I want to go with, I bet that's the feeling that's out there, like just major structural, budgetary, huge changes. The environmental footprint that the city of Milwaukee and Milwaukee County have combined as the 2 largest areas, essentially together in the city and the county, in the state of Wisconsin, even if a minor change is made, could have a total impact on the Midwest and the country and the nation. And I think what I want to close with is that that's the type of things that I try to show my children, is that, you know, you choosing not to put garbage somewhere and perhaps composting, you with your work could actually make a change. And if we all do that, we'll be leaving a better country and city and earth for those behind us. And so, again, I want to thank the people that came out today. My office received a number of phone calls and emails. Organizing matters. This is a representative democracy. I'm sorry, I just don't agree that it's a waste of time. In fact, I think this is something that is going to have a really valuable return on your investment of time. And I thank you for my children, because again, I really worry about that. So everyone is free to have their opinion. I totally appreciate that. In fact, I really appreciate that you were really direct and really honest about how you feel. But I do not agree with that, and I wanted to make sure I made it very clear to the folks that got together and lobbied us that when you, I mean, I think it was successful at the city and the county. That's pretty powerful, coming together and also tying it to much needed racial justice, which is definitely interwoven in a huge part of our climate change and our environmental protection. I think this is fabulous. I'm happy to support it. And I can't wait to see how we populate the appointments on both of the committees. So thank you for your time, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Supervisor. I'll just say that you didn't just start thinking about it. I want to recognize the fact that the green print and your efforts are now, I think, 15 years, something like that. So there was an earlier effort to get the county moving in the right direction, and I think we've been stalled. Obviously, part of that was an administration that didn't support that effort, didn't even want to appoint a sustainability director for the county for many years. So I recognize the effort to build on that with this, and I'd ask to also be added as a co-sponsor. I think it's consistent with small efforts that I've also tried to make in terms of pushing us to buy electric buses and move away from diesel and other things that this board have supported in the last budget. And I appreciate the effort to come together with the city. So hearing no objection, so ordered. Supervisor Haas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you for joining our growing, still open, list of co-sponsors, Mr. Chairman. You stole a bit of my thunder, Mr. Chairman. I'm actually glad to say that. As we were discussing this, I remembered there was prior legislation on this from the good supervisor from the 4th, the green print, as you said. Also, clever reference to the old journal, green pages, kind of. But what I was also struck by in these comments in our discussion about it was small changes. If you've paid any attention to science fiction or science or just popular culture, you know of the butterfly effect, where a little butterfly, say if you step on it 50 million years ago, it can have catastrophic consequences. Well, that's only in the world of Ray Bradbury, I'm sorry. But the butterfly effect, where if, the theory is that a butterfly flapping its wings in Brazil causes thunderstorms in China, or vice versa. There are little things we can do, and if we implement them on a larger scale, they can have bigger impacts. The law from 15 years ago directed the counties to start looking at its light bulbs and its energy consumption. That has had a net effect of lowering our power bill by hundreds of thousands of dollars, by lowering the total amount of energy we use, thus lowering the demand on the whole system, the need for the fuels that created the energy, the electricity that we used. It's certainly not enough. Absolutely, it's not enough. We are limited in some of our ability to get more stuff done, and we're going to have future challenges. For instance, many automotive manufacturers are currently starting to shift away from gasoline and diesel, but especially gasoline, towards battery-powered electric vehicles. Well, if we're going to move to that, then there's going to be a big demand for new vehicles eventually. And how is that going to affect people in lower-income communities? Are these going to be expensive vehicles? I'm not proposing we, as government, subsidize these purchases, but these are things we need to think about. And by passing this, which will address low-income neighborhoods, jobs were the most vitally needed in those communities, to start rebuilding those communities. If we do not do that, Mr. Chairman, then I think we have not served our constituents at all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Supervisor. Supervisor Moore-McClendon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank my colleagues for their continued support of this effort. I want to thank those who are seated behind me, folks from Citizen Action of Wisconsin, folks from the Sierra and 350.org, and a number of different coalitions that have come together for this effort. One of the reasons that we brought forth this resolution, I also want to thank the President of the Common Council, President and Alderman Ashanti Hamilton, for his leadership, because it was actually his words that said, I want a city and county joint task force on climate change and jobs. And so this is one of the reasons that we're here right now, because of his leadership in that way. And so I think what's most important is about it coming together and having a conversation and coming to an agreement and coming to a decision. And there are many folks who have great expertise who will be a member of this joint task force, and they will bring that expertise with them and give us some recommendation in the following months. And also, as we talk about climate change and preventing climate change, what's also important is the economic activity that's going to happen, the economic equity activity that's going to happen with this. We know that there will be many economic opportunities with solar energy and electric cars, and who has to build those cars and who has to build those charging ports, et cetera. We want to make sure that the hardest hit economically through deindustrialization, et cetera, will have opportunity to have access to that economic opportunity. Also, we want to make sure that we don't have the most vulnerable in our city when it comes to asthma rates, when it comes to living near power lines or living near certain communities where we have more pollution, that we can have experts who will talk about dealing with that as well. And so it's about expertise. And I think it's very important that that first step comes from an entity of government that says that we're going to do something about this you who get up and go to work every day and go to your jobs and come home and try to relax, you elect people to think about things like this on your behalf. And so I think it's very important that this body and the Common Council have come together to say that this is important, not only for prevention of climate change, but also the economic equity that will be involved in this as well. And these experts are going to get together and have these conversations and present this to us. So I want to take this time to thank my colleagues for their support, and thank everybody for their comments, and also to thank the people who are a part of the coalition. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Supervisor. Any further speakers on the item? Adoption is before the body on item 26.
Question is adoption. Supervisor Alexander? No. Cullen? Aye. Dimitrievich? Aye. Haas? Aye. Johnson Jr.? Aye. Logsdon? Aye. Martin? Aye. Moore Mukunde? Aye. Ortiz Velez? Schmidt? Aye. Sebring? No. Shea? Aye. Staskunas? Aye. Wasserman? Aye. Weishan Jr.? Aye. Mr. Chairman?
Aye. 13 ayes, 2 noes. The item is adopted. Supervisor Ortiz Velez, do you wish to be recorded in the affirmative on item 26? I would, thank you, Mr. Chairman. 14 ayes, 2 noes. Item is adopted.